Today, we're talking about the Batman films once again. This is actually the first series of films that I ever reviewed on this channel, but considering the fact that there's been several movies released since my first video, I decided it's time to do an updated ranking for you guys. I love the Cape Crusader, and he's probably my favorite superhero. I love most of the movies he's in as well, but there are a few stinkers along the way. So without further ado, let's get started with my list from the worst to best. Justice League. Where is Justice League, you may ask? I don't own that piece of crap. I did see this in theaters, and I thought it was fine upon first seeing it, but after learning more about the movie, it just feels wrong. This film is just more or less a bastardization of another man's film, a mistake of a movie that never should have been made, and one that I really hope never gains any sort of traction. There's only one version of Justice League, and it's Zack Snyder's. So, in last place, this abomination. Up next is 1995's Batman Forever. Batman Forever is not a terrible film, but it's one that I always found rather boring. There are, without a doubt, worse movies out there, and this film's not god awful, but it has a strong opening where Batman takes on Two-Face, and has a pretty strong finale where Batman and Robin take on Two-Face and the Riddler. But everything in between, the middle hour or so, or hour and 15 minutes, is just kind of dull. A few exciting spots here and there, but just kind of a cheesy and dull film. One that I never could really get that into. Next, we have Batman and Robin. Now, I can meet you folks halfway. If we're talking purely on a technical level, this may be the worst Batman movie ever made. But having said that, I find this one to be a lot of fun. This one stars Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, a completely terrible miscasting. Chris O'Donnell returns as Robin, and this time George Clooney takes up the mantle as Batman. Alicia Silverstone also joins the crew as Batgirl, and she is terrible. Throw in Poison Ivy as well as a god-awful version of Bane, and you have a shitfest, but a shitfest that I find very entertaining. Up next, you have 1966's Batman the Movie. All this is an extension of the TV series. Batman the Movie was released at the height of that series, and it shows Batman and Robin go up against Penguin, the Riddler, Catwoman, and Joker as they try to stop them from more or less taking over, I think, the United Nations. It's been a while since I watched this one, but it's just kind of a silly story. If you love the classic TV series, you'll get a kick out of this movie. Up next, we have one of the most flawed movies in Christopher Nolan's career, and that's The Dark Knight Rises. This film is just kind of ridiculous. Not only does the plot make very little sense, it's just full of plot holes as well. And the character of Bane is pretty damn good. Catwoman is decently portrayed by Anne Hathaway here. And Christian Bale, even though I never did like the Batman voice, is still really good as the Cape Crusader. There is some good action here, an amazing spectacle, but it has a very nonsensical story. I swear Christopher Nolan doesn't know how money or the stock market works, or paying bills works for that matter. And this movie pretty much shows that. If you don't mind a crazy and over-the-top film about Bane taking over Gotham with an atomic bomb while the cops in the city pretty much forget how their guns work, well, watch The Dark Knight Rises. It's entertaining, but nonsensical as all hell. This is another film that I don't own, and that would have to be The Flash. I actually rather like the Flash movie, but I only went to go see it because Michael Keaton was returning in the film as Batman. I love the Michael Keaton Batman movies, so seeing Batman again, played by Michael Keaton on the big screen, I just had to check this movie out. Now, don't get me wrong, it's definitely more of a Flash movie than it is a Batman movie, but consider the fact that there's literally 3 different Batman in the film, I could not put it on this list. Very enjoyable, very entertaining, very silly too. The opening is just a cornball fest, but honestly, I really enjoyed seeing Michael Keaton again. All his scenes are the best parts of the movie. And if you want a proper old Batman story that's actually better than The Dark Knight Rises, I recommend The Flash. It's flawed, it's silly, but a damn good superhero film. Up next, we have 2016's Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition. Specifically, the Ultimate Edition. The theatrical cut has been butchered all to hell. This is actually a pretty damn good film. I think it's a terrible rap due to its poor theatrical cut. But if you watch the 3-hour cut, most of the mistakes have pretty much been remedied. It's more or less a proper retelling of the Dark Knight Returns storyline, and one that I very much enjoy. I think this film is phenomenal. I do think it has some flaws. I do think like the Doomsday section of the movie is tacked on. But if you want to see Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman together for the first time on the big screen, kicking ass and beating the shit out of each other, you can't miss this film. Up next is the classic, The Dark Knight. I get that this is most people's favorite Batman movie, but to me, it's a little too much. The film, for me, doesn't really get exciting until like past the first 30 minutes. And then I think Joker, while very entertaining in the film, pretty much just steals the show. It's always been the nature of the character, but Batman might as well just be a footnote in this film because the villains completely outshine him. I still do like the movie, but every time that Batman's on screen, it just doesn't seem that interesting. And every time Joker's on screen, it seems to be pretty damn entertaining. This is more or less the first movie that is completely about the Joker, I would say. There's nothing terrible about the film, and I think the plot's pretty fun, showing Gotham being more or less taken over by the Joker and Batman trying his damnedest to stop it. It's a crazy and over-the-top fun movie that honestly gets all the love it needs, and I think it's a little bit overrated. I hate to use that term, but it's the second coming of Batman, but it's really not. A fun and entertaining film with some pacing issues, and definitely having Batman being overshadowed and more or less a footnote of his own movie. Up next, we have Zack Snyder's Justice League. This is the definitive version of Justice League, and the only version that ever should have been released. The film is phenomenal, and it basically shows our heroes teaming up to fight Steppenwolf and protect Earth from an invasion by Apocalypse. It's great seeing these heroes together again. Henry Cavill is amazing as Superman. Aquaman is great in the film. Everyone's on full cylinders. Cyborg, who was basically a footnote in the original version of the film, is basically the main character in this version of the film. He kind of gets the most screen time out of all the new characters, and he, like I said, it's pretty much his movie. I don't know how they screwed it up so bad with the Joss Whedon version, but this is the version of the film that you definitely want to see. There's nothing about this film that I really think is bad. The only thing I could say is maybe you probably could have trimmed 20 minutes off of it. It is a 4-hour movie. But basically, it's more or less 2 movies sandwiched into one. It was a damn shame what Warner Brothers did to Zack Snyder. But it's great that he did see some justice and finally got to see this movie released. Zack Snyder's Justice League. Check it out. Up next, we have another film that I don't own. Mostly just because it's been on HBO Max since its release. And that's The Batman. I actually rather do enjoy The Batman. I actually was a bit of a naysayer against this film because I couldn't see Robert Pattinson as Batman. But I was basically proven wrong. But one thing I will say about this film, to me, it's kind of just playing it safe. It really works, don't get me wrong. But what I feel Matt Reeves did, he looked at everything that didn't work in previous Batman films. Over the top silliness, too much CGI and stuff like that. And everything that did work, mostly from the Nolan films, the serious tone, the dark, macabre atmosphere, and just went with what worked and played it very safe. The film, to me, just seems like another Batman movie. Mind you, I still rank it so high because it is pretty damn flawless, but that's mostly because of what came before it. What I mean by that is, it was easy to make a Batman movie. Well, nothing's really easy, but it was a lot easier to make a Batman movie when you knew exactly how to do it because you could follow in the footsteps of everyone who had gone before you and made mistakes. So he didn't make the same mistakes Nolan did, or the same mistakes that Tim Burton did, or the same mistakes Schumacher did, or Zack Snyder for that matter, and delivered a perfectly well-polished machine. But on the same token, it doesn't really feel like it takes any risks. I have to put it as high as this because, like I said, there's really not many flaws with the film. But on the same token, it's just a Batman movie, a very well-made one, but, it just can't have that cultural impact that the first film did or that The Dark Knight did with a more contemporary relaunch. Solid film, but I would like to see more risks taken in the sequel. I'd probably respect it more just because it tried something new. Next is Batman, Mask of the Phantasm. An amazing animated film that more or less is a prequel and continuation of Batman, the animated series. If you love the show, there's nothing to love about this film. There's really not much I can say about this one other than give it a watch. It is fantastic. Up next, my favorite of the realistic Batman movies, meaning the ones that are more or less grounded in reality, and that's Batman Begins. I love this film. It is the proper origin story to the Batman. The film actually follows Bruce Wayne from his childhood, all the way from his parents being killed, and him becoming Batman. It's more or less a Batman Year One movie, mixed with his complete origin of the tragedy of his parents. I know a lot of people prefer The Dark Knight, but to me, that's a Joker movie. Batman Begins is a proper Batman movie. You get to see him take on Ra's al Ghul, as well as the Scarecrow for the first time in live action, and it's just amazing. I think it was good choosing not smaller villains, but less, super-powered villains for this first entry into the realistic Batman franchise. One that I love and one that I absolutely adore. If you're a fan of Batman, you have to check out this movie. It's the best version of realistic Batman and one of my favorite Batman movies of all time. Coming in at number 2 is the wacky, the zany, the crazy, the sexy, the fun Batman Returns. I say about this film, you got the Bat, the Cat, and the Penguin. Ironically enough, you also have them in the Batman as well. This is the best version of Batman, in my opinion, as far as visuals go. It's not the best Batman movie, but as far as what I want to see in a Batman movie, this is it. Tim Burton created a beautiful version of Gotham. It's dark, it's macabre, it's weird, it's strange, it's all its own. It's a comic book come to life. Batman's movie has an atmosphere that matches this one, and I think even to this day, it is the most beautiful version of Gotham that we've ever seen. And I wish to see it recreated one day in a future Batman film, maybe with Michael Keaton returning. You just can't beat the classics, and there's nothing better than the original Batman film, but man, is this one not close. And I adore this film. It is purely amazing, and if you haven't seen Batman Returns, it's a great film. You need to check it out. Although I will say, the title is misleading. He doesn't actually return anywhere. I guess you could say he's returning to the big screen, but that's like a fourth wall kind of break title. Because Batman literally is still just doing his Batman thing. But, apart from a weird title, a solid film, and my favorite Christmas movie of all time. But you can't beat the original 1989's Tim Burton directed Batman. An amazing performance by Jack Nicholson as the Joker. We see Batman about a few months into his tenure, I would say, as the hero, as he tries to stop the clown prince of crime from taking over Gotham. Starring Kim Basinger as Vicky Vale, Michael Keaton as Batman, and of course Jack Nicholson as the Joker. You can't go wrong with this film. Fun comic book action, crazy over-the-top soundtrack featuring Prince songs, an amazing Batmobile, an awesome Batman costume. People didn't think Batman could be done seriously in live action, and this film more or less proved that he could. I adore this movie, and there's a lot of nostalgia in this choice, but it's the one I find the most entertaining. Not technically the most flawless Batman movie, of course not. That's probably like The Batman or Batman Begins, but the one I had the most fun with. Well, that's my list. I thank you all for watching, and peace out.